On today's edition of Early Look, I'm going to be previewing the June 17th main event for UFC Fight Night between Marvin Vettori and Jared Cannonier. And if you haven't watched the show before, I'm going to go through a bunch of different stats, a bunch of different intangibles. I'm going to do my preview, and then I'll give you my pick at the end. Some of the stuff may have relevance, it may not. That's for you to decide, but I like to look at every single angle when it comes to breaking down fights. Really love this matchup. I did a video on this right when it was announced. Let's do a quick tail of the tape. Marvin Vettori, 19-5-1, taking on Jared Cannonier, 16-6, 29 years old to 39, 6 feet tall to 5'11", 74 to 77.5. So the reach advantage going to Jared, the height advantage going to Marvin. Marvin obviously a lot younger as well too. Let's start first with, we'll start with Marvin Vettori first. Let's go with him. You can see there the Italian Dream as I'm trying to scroll up here. I don't know why it's going so slow. There you go. So Marvin Vettori, let's start with him. 18-5-1. He's got 2 knockouts. Sorry, 19-5-1. 2 knockouts, 8 submissions, and 7 decisions. He is 28, like I mentioned. He'll be turning, he's 29. He'll be turning 30 on September 20th. He is 6 feet tall with a 74-inch reach. So he's 9 years younger. Will have a 1-inch height advantage in this fight. He's currently the number 3 ranked middleweight. He's a BJJ brown belt. Used to train at King's MMA, now training at Extreme Couture with Sean Strickland and so many other fighters over there. He's got Performance of the Night bonus 2 times against Carl Roberson and Paulo Costa. He's got Fight of the Night 1 time against Jack Hermanson. Let's go all the way back to February 2011. That is when Marvin Vettori made his MMA debut. He made his professional debut in August of 2013. Did not make his UFC debut until August 2016. So not that, I mean, had his pro debut, and then 3 years later, he ends up in the UFC. Definitely one of Italy's brightest prospects. Marvin Vettori's UFC career is 9-4 with 1 draw. He's had 1 stoppage win in that time. That was against Carl Roberson. I think you forget about that with Marvin, that a lot of his fights do end up going the distance. I'm mistaken. He's actually got 2 stoppage victories. So he's got the Uda fight and he's got the Carl Roberson fight. So 2 stoppage victories in his career. Some notable wins for Marvin Vettori include Jack Hermanson, Kevin Holland, Paulo Costa, and Roman Dolidze. Some notable losses he's had. He's had 2 losses to Israel Adesanya and just 1 to Robert Whittaker. So he's only losing to fighters in the division that are, you know, champions or former champions, which is pretty good to have. He's had a few layoffs in his career. We'll talk about those real quick. Going from Adesanya to Adesanya to Cesar Ferreira, there was a 455-day layoff. And then going from Paulo Costa to Robert Whittaker, there was a 315-day layoff. But overall, he's been pretty active in his career. Even the Dolidze fight was earlier this year, and then he's going to be fighting 3 months later. So gotta like that when it comes to Marvin Vettori, keeping active in the octagon. Another thing with Marvin, which would come with activity as well, he doesn't get injured very much, right? Like, you don't see a lot of these cancellations were his opponents. They weren't things that happen on Marvin's side. So Marvin's been pretty healthy throughout his career. Now, because he's gone the distance so many times, there are a couple fights that have been pretty close. Let's start first with the draw he had with Omari Akhmedov. That was back at UFC 219. And just looking at that, the media scorecards for that one. And again, you can find all that on MMAdecisions.com. 2 media members scored the fight for Vettori, 3 scored it a draw, 10 scored it for Akhmedov. So maybe that ends up being a loss for Marvin Vettori instead of a draw. I remember watching that fight way back in 2017 and thinking, I don't know if he pulled that one off. So very close fight there for Marvin. The other fight that everyone always references is the split decision loss he had to Israel Adesanya. That was back at UFC on Fox 29 in April of 2018. I really don't see how Marvin won that fight. I don't think it should have been a split, and the media scorecards agree with this one. 15 media members scored the fight for Adesanya, just 2 scoring it for Marvin Vettori. And then his last fight against Roman Dolidze, very, very close fight. That was at UFC 286 back in March. Media scorecards for that one, very, very, very close. 14 media members scored the fight for Vettori. 14 media members scored the fight for Dolidze. I actually thought Dolidze won that fight. I remember coming away watching it thinking, I think Marvin lost, and it turns out that Vettori ended up winning. So razor close fight. Again, Vettori gets the nod in that one, but a little bit more closer for comfort. And he didn't really, and I mean, all things considered, did not look like a -250 favorite in that fight, which you see the odds there. Dolidze looked great in that matchup. And, like I said, 14 people thought that Dolidze should have won that one. Looking at some stats with Marvin Vettori, we talked about the decisions. Again, 42% of his wins are by decision. 47 are by submission, but he hasn't got any submission wins in the UFC. He's got 9 wins. Those have all been outside the UFC. One of them is a win in the UFC, and that was the Carl Roberson one. But the other stoppage, I guess that was submission as well. What am I talking about here? He's got 2 submission wins in the UFC. The rest are decisions. Kind of what I was getting at here, guys, before you start making fun of me, is that, majority of his wins in the UFC have been by decision. just a couple by submission, just the 2 wins by submission, but overall in his career, he's had more submission wins. Kind of what I was getting at there. As far as stats here, Marvin Vettori, significant strikes landed per minute in the UFC is 4.38, which is, I think it's like kind of average. Significant striking accuracy is at 44%, meaning he doesn't hit that much. And then his significant strike defense is at 59%, so he doesn't actually get hit that much either himself. He's got a 75% takedown defense rate, so we'll see if that plays a role in this fight with Jared Cannonier's wrestling. And that's pretty much all you need to know about Marvin Vettori. Again, I'll emphasize it here again. Not much of a finisher, but someone that's also not been finished in his career. And also, you look at his 3 losses, they're against, the 2 best guys in the division, I think, at this point. If we can count Pereira being out of the equation here, Adesanya and Robert Whittaker are the 2 best middleweights in this division. So, yeah, it's going to be a really interesting matchup here on June 17th. Let's talk about his opponent here, Jared Cannonier, the Killa Gorilla. So you can see there, 16-6 record, 10 knockouts, 2 submissions, 4 decisions. He's a number 4 ranked middleweight. He's 39 years old. He's 5'11" with a 77-inch reach. So he'll have a 3.5-inch reach advantage in this fight. He's a BJJ purple belt, trains at the MMA lab. He's got fight of the night 1 time against Ian Cutelaba. He's got performance of the night 4 times against Cyril Asker, David Branch, Jack Hermanson, and Derek Brunson. Just like Marvin Vettori, Jared Cannonier also made his amateur debut back in 2011. And then made his MMA debut in June of 2011. So went straight from the amateurs to the pros, so to speak. The big thing with Jared that, no pun intended, that I think people forget is that he's fought in 3 different weight classes. So he's fought 9 times at heavyweight. He's fought 5 times at light heavyweight. And then he's fought 7 times at middleweight already. So he's actually fought more outside of the middleweight division than he has in the middleweight division. But again, I think he's at his best at middleweight. Cannonier is 9-6 in the UFC. He's got six stoppage victories. Interesting thing with Jared, and granted, he was probably in the wrong weight class. He actually started his UFC career 3-4, if you look at it here, right? So, 1, 2, 3, and then 4 losses there. So it was able to sort of turn it around. He's got some notable wins, though. Anderson Silva, got to put that one on the list, even though Silva was on the tail end of his career there, former middleweight champion. He also beat Jack Hermanson, although he actually knocked out Jack Hermanson, something Marvin Vettori wasn't able to do in his fight. Kelvin Gastelum has a win over him, which, saw Kelvin in his last fight show a little bit of life in that division. Derek Brunson, he finished him in the second round. And then Sean Strickland in his last fight, which is a split decision, but again, a very good win on the resume. He's had a couple layoffs here. Let's go through those. Going from Sean Jordan to Cyril Asker, there was a 463-day layoff. And then going from Jack Hermanson, where are we here? Jack Hermanson to Robert Whittaker, there was a 392-day layoff. Forgot to mention his losses. I'll just mention those quickly, but you look at who he's losing to, there's some really good fighters, other than maybe Sean Jordan. So Sean Jordan, that's one he would have liked back. But look at this: Glover Teixeira, Jan Blachowicz, Dominic Reyes, Robert Whittaker, Israel Adesanya. So much like Marvin Vettori, the strength of schedule has been strong, and his losses are against top flight competition. So that's one thing to really consider when you're looking at this fight, because Jared is absolutely no pushover at all when it comes to being an awesome opponent here. He's had one injury of note that took him out of a fight. The fight against, he was supposed to fight Jonathan Wilson back in 2015, and he had a broken rib there. But outside of that, he's been pretty healthy overall. Let's talk about that fight with Sean Strickland. You saw it there. It was a split decision. Very close fight. Looking at the media scorecards for that one, that was at UFC on ESPN plus 74, or UFC Fight Night, Cannonier Strickland back in December. 13 media members scored the fight for Cannonier, 7 scored it for Strickland. I thought Cannonier won that fight. Again, though, very close matchup. And some quick stats here for you for Jared Cannonier as far as his career. His significant strikes landed per minute is 4, so that's slightly less than what Marvin Vettori has. His striking accuracy is at 50%, so it's a little bit higher than Marvin. Significant strike defense is at 61%, so that's also higher than Marvin Vettori. And his takedown defense is at 65%, which is slightly lower than what Marvin Vettori brings to the table here. Tough fight, absolutely. I am one that usually picks Jared Cannonier fights correctly, and I'm also someone who picks Marvin Vettori fights pretty correctly, I would say. Although I think I might have picked Hermanson against him, so that might have been one that was not right. But as far as my pick for this fight, I am gonna go with Marvin Vettori. I think he gets it done here. Now, there's a couple of reasons why I like Marvin in this fight. The big one is the age gap. I think Marvin is still an unfinished product. I think with Jared Cannonier, you kind of know what you're getting here. He's got an absolute cannon of a hand. He can knock guys out. We saw that in the Jack Hermanson fight, but it doesn't, like if that doesn't work, then like how's he going to do, right? It's kind of a tough situation. The fight against Derek Brunson, I think people forget Jared actually, in my opinion, lost that first round. And Derek was looking good in that one, but we know Derek's been knocked out a handful of times. What happened in the second round? Cannonier comes out, he knocks him out. So, while he did get that win, it was not like a flawless performance there. I'd also say that Cannonier lost the first 2 rounds to Sean Strickland as well. No big deal there, but, again, it was not like a completely dominant performance in that one. And then Jared Cannonier, I also thought, did not win a single round against Israel Adesanya, although you could probably say the same thing about Marvin Vettori in some of his fights as well against Israel Adesanya too. The point I'm getting at is that Cannonier's getting a little bit older. He does have knockout power, but he's fighting a guy in Marvin Vettori who both Israel Adesanya and Robert Whittaker could not finish. Now, granted, I would argue Cannonier's got more power, I would say, than Adesanya and Whittaker. Although I guess that's debatable a little bit too, but Cannonier, we see him finish more, and he's fighting a guy that's just really tough to finish in Marvin Vettori. Maybe this is the fight where Marvin gets knocked out. I don't know, but the stats, say otherwise, that it's a little bit difficult to see, sort of a path to victory here for Cannonier. With Vettori, younger, a little bit faster, picks his shots well. The only concern I have with Vettori is when you saw that fight against Robert Whittaker, he really did look outclassed in that one. Like that was a fight where it's like, okay, Marvin is not a contender, so to speak, and Robert Whittaker is. And maybe it's just how good Whittaker was in that fight. Like maybe it was a case of that, but that was one where I took a step back. And then you even look at his last fight, did he he was lucky to get that win against Dolidze. Now, granted, these are 2 really good opponents. Dolidze is very good, as is Robert Whittaker. But I'm also not like, I guess my thing with Vettori is like, he's well-rounded, but he doesn't really excel in any particular area. Like he's a good, like well-rounded guy. He doesn't get finished a lot. But if like he doesn't do anything outstanding, whereas like with Cannonier, we know he can finish fights every now and then, right? Like I said, one of the few guys to finish Jack Hermanson in his career here. I don't believe we have odds on this yet. I'm just going to quickly double check on bestfightodds.com to see if we have anything. Does not look like we have any odds, but if you look on Tapology right now, you'll see that Marvin Vettori is leading the way at 83%. So, and then that's kind of where I'm going. Now, look, if these guys were a little bit closer in age, and it was a case of maybe, I don't know, Vettori, being finished before, I might feel a little bit better about picking Jared Cannonier here, but I just can't. Like again, he's almost 40. Marvin Vettori is a guy that, like I said, extremely durable, tough to finish. And I just think with it being a 5-round fight, I feel a little bit better about taking Marvin in the spot. Not to mention Marvin has a teammate in Sean Strickland who just fought Jared Cannonier. So there's a lot of insight there in the camp. I'm sure that's going to play a role too. But yeah, I think Marvin Vettori probably takes the decision here. Vettori does not finish a lot of his opponents. And even the submission wins that I referenced earlier, one of them was against Carl Roberson, who's been submitted I don't know how many times. I think Carl's actually lost most of his fights by submission. And I think the other guy was Alberto Uda, I think was the other guy that he submitted, right? Yeah, Alberto Uda, who didn't last very long in the UFC. So yeah, I think Marvin Vettori by decision is probably the play here. I'm curious to see what the odds are. If I had to set the line here, I'd probably go Vettori like minus 200 around there. You could even maybe go a little bit higher. Just it's mainly because of the path to victory. Like I think Cannonier's got one shot to win this fight, and that's by knocking out Marvin Vettori. It's possible he wins the decision like he did against Sean Strickland, but I kind of view Vettori as like a better version of Sean Strickland, and I think it'll be enough for him to edge out the scorecards here. So yeah, if you're gonna play this, I mean, we'll have to see what the odds look like, but I would think Vettori by decision is not a bad call considering it is. I know it's a 5-round fight, and typically you do see finishes there, but I think that's likely how this fight plays out. So I want to know what you guys think in the comments section below. Who do you like in this fight? How do you think it goes down? How do you think it ends up finishing in this one? I would love to hear from you. Always happy to talk about fights as long as you guys are going to be cool about it. Not, don't get weird. That's kind of what I'm saying here. There are people who get a little obsessive, especially like I might say one thing here and people like obsess over it. That type of stuff we're trying to avoid. Let's just have a good discussion about the fight as well. And if there's any other fights you want me to preview that are coming up, even if they're not like a main event or a title fight, let me know. Recently I just did Ian Gary and Daniel Rodriguez. That was a fight that was requested, and a lot of people liked it. So just let me know in the comments if there's any other fights you want me to preview that are coming up. In the meantime, follow me Twitter, Instagram, TikTok @Lynch on Sports. I'm James Lynch. Appreciate you watching. I'll see you guys next time.